Hi, everybody. Hi, Tricia. Welcome to Labor of Love 9. How you doing?
Yay, number 9.
I
Oh, there's been a
know.
lot of nines. There's been a lot of nines in the comms lately.
Yeah, it's a great number for sure. And I love this series that we're doing because we've had so many people who are just important in so many areas of this community. And each episode is different and I look forward to it. And today we have two incredible patriots who are also highly intelligent businessmen, and they have been part of the advertising and part of the podcast in representing their organizations and their companies. And so it's just so cool to have both of these fellas together on our show because I feel like I know them. So without further ado, I can't wait to introduce them. First, we have David Becker and Matt Geiger. Wow, what an honor to have both of you together. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you guys.
Love hearing and putting faces now with the names of these two wonderful patriots that we've heard about in the movement for quite a long time now. And David's no stranger, I'm sure, to a lot of our audience, and I'm sure Matt isn't either. So looking forward to getting the download on silver, which we're going to talk a lot about, but also learning a little bit more about the both of you that maybe our audience doesn't know, maybe in the years preceding this movement that we're all finding ourselves in now. So welcome.
Yes.
Awesome.
Welcome. So, David, I wanted to start with you. You're such uh, a positive force in so many people's lives when they meet you, and I've heard, meeting you in person, and they've just really enjoyed spending time with you. But to start out with, tell people, what you're doing now and the business that you're able to offer people now.
I've been in medical insurance for 36 years, and the industry is as corrupt as anything that we're seeing with the rest of the government, especially since COVID. The hospitals are basically getting paid to kill people, and whatever's happened since, the amount they charge for routine procedures, it's just insane. Like, I saw somebody get charged over $1 million when they were quoted 54,000 for it. I see people going from minor things like MRIs, which cost $400, and they're being charged 4,000, 10,000. They could basically charge whatever they want. So what I try to do is protect my clients from this with the best type of policies. We have, group policies that do accept individuals, et cetera, and we're able to get them group rates and PPOs, which make sure you're protected no matter what happens.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be a constant fight, and people don't realize how corrupt it is. But, thank God there are people like you who can give people the knowledge and information and be a part of something, that is not corrupt. And you're such an upstanding person. And thank you for standing up for what's right for a very important part of our community and what's needed so much. So thank you, David. And then for Matt, I mean, what's happening with what you're doing as a businessman? It's pretty hot right now.
And you know what? It's so funny. It's the same story as David. It's such a corrupt industry. The gold and silver business, if you see what some of these companies are doing, companies that, we're obviously not going to, say who they are. I know exactly who they are because I see what people pay.
Yeah.
People are paying 100, 200, 300% premiums. That means, if you have a $100,000 retirement account or you do a $100,000 purchase, that means your account value is 25,000 or 30,000 by the time they're done with you. The rest of that goes into the gold company's pocket. So I think where I think I kind of share something with David very much is that I think we see our industries as places where we can almost clean them up, just by coming to us. In a sense, we're almost cleaning up our respective industries and doing it in a way where, hey, we're dealing with the patriot community. These are soul family. These are people that I don't want your grandmother's retirement account money. Sure, we all got to make money. We all got to make a commission, but within the realm of reason and something that's fair for the job you do. We're not here to take grandma and grandpa's, IRAs and 401ks and pocket them. It's disgusting. And unfortunately, there's no regulation. It's like what David said about the government. It's the same thing. It's corruption, corruption, corruption. So I built a very good reputation by being honest, by being transparent. People can come to me. They know they'll get the truth. Like I said, we all have to make money, but we'll do it within the realm of reason, and we'll show you. It's as simple as that. And on a side note, look at gold and silver. Look what they've done over the last gold doubled in the last 2 years. Silver just doubled in the last couple months, in the last 6 months. So it's been really exciting. And I always found gold and silver to be a great savings tool. When I was younger. And before you know it, you'd be amazed. You got a big stack. I was talking with David before the show with you guys, and he's like, "Hey, I've been, me and my wife, we bought silver over the years, and look at you now, David. Look at what you're sitting on. It's real wealth." And I think with what's coming in the banking system, what's coming with the Great Awakening, it's such an exciting time. But be prepared financially. Right. Have the pieces in place, storables at home, whatever, be ready to get through some tough times, because I think we have some ahead.
Yes, I've heard that too. But, and what's so amazing, David is dealing in this whole massive industry of health, and you're dealing with this whole massive industry, Matt, of finances. And the two massive industries obviously would have to be corrupt in so many different ways. And thank God there are good guys who are exposing this and are doing the right thing for people
Amen.
in the right way. So thank God for you fellas. And that's why we're just so honored to have you here to be able to talk to both of you. So before we really get into the topics of what's happening today, our audience always loves to get to know you more as people. So David, I want to start with you. Tell us, about you as a kid. We were able to get a couple pictures from you that I would love to show. And then as your family, you grew as a family, and just tell us about your life a little bit.
Sure. I was born in Philadelphia 62 years ago, and we ended up moving to the suburbs when it got kind of dangerous in the city itself. About 1968, 70, we moved, and I had a really great childhood. I have an older sister, 2 years older, and a younger brother, 2 years younger. We moved to a suburban neighborhood with lots of kids to play with. I was big into sports. There you go. I got to play sports pretty much year round from the time I was 7 years old, and actually into college a bit. So my childhood was fine. My parents ended up getting divorced back when nobody did, back in the 70s, but it worked
Oh,
out.
really?
Yeah, it was a thing. I was like this. There was one other kid in the school whose parents were divorced, so it was kind of a thing. Now, of course, it's so common. But I basically, it was a fun childhood growing up in a good location. I was a big sports fan. My father was taking me to games when I was a little kid, and it stayed with me my whole life. And into golf and things like that. So that part of it was great. I went to college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was actually pre-med, which was horrible for me. I hated it. I was just not cut out for it. I ended up switching to business, and I loved it. I graduated with a degree in finance, and I started out as a stockbroker. So I had all the licenses, the metals licenses, the options, and everything. And I did that for about 5 or 6 years, and then I got into insurance. So it was, I was pretty fortunate, and I grew up with a pretty solid family and brothers and sisters I got along with, and friends. So really I had a good early life.
That just sounds so wonderful. And so your siblings that you were right in the middle of, have they also grown up to understand what's happening in the world? Does your family see what's going on, or is it just you and the family?
We got booted out. My lovely wife, Carrie, and I got thrown out of our own family. I'm the oldest living male. No, my sister's a hardcore communist who ends up brainwashing my mother, who was not just married to my father, was a capitalist conservative, but her second husband was too. They're completely brainwashed normies. They are afraid of MAGA people. They actually booted us out. One of my nieces had a baby. They didn't even tell us. We were disinvited from Thanksgiving, and I get it. I might be controversial and outspoken, but my wife is loved by everybody, and they not only threw my wife and I out, everybody else in the family was okay with it, apparently. So it's
Oh,
fine. The family that Carrie and I have created is all we need, and we have so many friends, and this is our family.
right.
The Patriot movement, the Truth movement, we have more friends in it than we can count. We're so blessed. We love this family. We love the get-togethers. So we're as happy as could be. Eventually, the family I was born into, they're going to learn the truth, and it's going to be ugly for them. And I've tried to wake them, as you can imagine, but it's an impossible task at this point. So those relationships are all completely dead currently.
Yeah.
And
That,
oh, I'm
go ahead,
sorry,
Tricia.
Ellen. I was just going to say I didn't want the audience to see my chuckling when David first started that conversation to read into anything other than David and I had this conversation when I first talked to him. So I was remembering how he went through that with me, and so I just wanted to clarify that I was laughing with you, David, not at you.
Yes, and I think we all chuckle because of our similar stories that we
Yeah.
each have on a different level, you know. And so, Matt, what about you and your life
Here,
growing up?
here comes another one, right? Total dysfunction on my end, but yeah, grew up in Long Island, grew up in Port Washington, New York. Had a great childhood. You know, did what every kid would do. You know, they call it the Gold Coast because all the money's there. But when I grew up, it was just, you know, middle class, lower. You know, I grew up sort of lower middle class. You know, houses weren't what they are today. I mean, it's crazy. Sorry, it's my dog. River, come on. I got my doggies here, my little puppies.
Okay.
But it was a great, you know, I had a great upbringing. I had really great friends I grew up with. I'm very grateful. I don't think I would be the person today if I didn't grow up in Long Island. But similar, same with David. You know, they're all, you know, hardcore liberal communists. They all voted for Hillary Clinton. It's really caused a big divide in the family for sure. And I just sit here and it's like, you know, these are people that think they know everything. And what's freeing to me is realizing that I know nothing. And I'm just anxious to learn what history is really about. Can you break them up? Come on.
We can't hear him.
Yeah. My two puppies are playing with each other. But yeah, I had a great childhood. I got into my first job ever was actually at the Yellow Pages. I sold Yellow Pages, if you can believe it. I'm that old. And then I got into the insurance world, did that for a number of years. And the kind of my industry there kind of fizzled out. So here I was, you know, probably 2009, 2010, kind of just thinking about what I wanted to do, you know, kind of start a new career path. And I remember I was riding down the 7 train and, you know, I was looking to get back to the financial world. You know, this is obviously after the 2008 crash, you know, within a year or two. And I'm riding on the 7 train out to Flushing, right? And the stop right before Flushing was Citi Field, what's now Citi Field. You know, they were building, you know, they had taken down Shea Stadium and it was Citi Field. And I said to myself right then and there, I said, wait a minute, we just bailed out Citibank for trillions of dollars. And here they are 2 years later building a baseball field. And I right then and there, I knew the whole financial system was completely upside down. It was a complete scam. It just came to me. Here I am sitting on the 7 train, right, riding above Roosevelt Avenue all the way out to Queens. And that's when I knew. So I went out to Los Angeles, not to be an actor or, you know, using none of that nonsense. I just liked the weather. And I wound up getting involved in the gold business. And I had been buying silver, you know, just as a savings tool for years. Gold was a little bit above my budgets at the time, you know, when I was younger. And eventually I realized, I said, hey, I can make, you know, there's companies that sell this stuff. I can make a living doing this. So I worked for some of the big gold companies, good ones at the time. And then eventually just decided to open up my own shop, Verity Metals, which is my company. And you know, what these companies out there charge, you know, it's unbelievable. You know, like I said before, 100, 200, 300% premiums. So I've had really good relationships with different podcasters that, you know, I can be a local business. You know, I have my office over here 2 exits away in Glendale at 75th and Bell. But I work, you know, nationally as well. You know, so I work with everybody around the country. So it's really interesting. And I've really tapped into this Patriot movement. So it's like, you know, I get to deal with the world's best people. You know, I have like the dream job. I get to deal with the world's best people. You know, we're not talking about gold and silver on calls. We're talking about, you know, is Michelle Obama a man or a woman? You know, those are the types of conversations we're having. You know, it's less about the gold and silver. And it's like, hey, what are you hearing? You know, I've heard this. What are you, you know, so it's like, it's fun because, you know, in my industry, you know, being awake since, you know, maybe late 2017, early 2018, when we obviously heard about Q and that whole movement, it's been really fun to see. I've almost, just through interactions of just the average person, I've been able to see the awakening process. So
Right.
I'm watching people waking up, and it's really, it's very satisfying. It's very satisfying when, one of my best friends, he was completely, when I met him out here in Arizona, when I moved out here 5 years ago, I tell him a lot of this stuff. And now he's coming to me with like, hey, did you see this? Did you see that? It's so funny. And, I always love that when we talk to each other about like, hey, what's your awakening story? I feel like we could all write a book, and everybody's book would be interesting. It'd be different, and it would be unique, so our experience in this whole thing is just, it's wild. I mean, I was watching 107 in the summer of 2019 on the Able Danger show. Next thing you know, I'm sitting next to him having a conversation, or on a show. So it's like, it's so cool that, you get to start to meet these people. And, they're just, they're just like everybody else, but, they're definitely doing a lot. And a guy like Juan, I mean, hats off to him. I love the guy.
Yeah. Well, on a side note, I have to say, when he did the audio version of Kid by the Side of the Road, I read chapter 1 and I read the audio of chapter 1, and Patriot Underground read a chapter 2. So I would love to meet him sometime. But here's what's so cool. So Matt, you started in insurance, and David, you started in financing, and then you guys swapped, which is hilarious. I can't believe it. So David from Philly and Matt from Long Island, and even though Matt, you might not have been living there at the time, I'd love to get your perspective. David first, how did 9/11 affect you? And what did you think was happening then? And what were your thoughts back then?
I was not awake totally, not at all. I was awake enough to know I was a huge Reagan supporter. He was my first vote in 1984. I was 21. I watched him do everything by what I thought was the right way. Capitalism, free markets. I'm a free marketeer, and the markets boomed, and I thought everything was great. So I was awake then, but when 9/11 happened, I just bought the narrative, Osama bin Laden, and whatever. And it wasn't until a few years later, I saw some guy in a car that was covered in stickers that said 9/11 was an inside job. And of course, I thought at first he's nuts, but then I started looking into it. And then, I'm not the kind of digging that we've done recently in the last 10 years, but I certainly was questioning things about it, but I was not awake fully until Obama ran for office. That's what woke me up. I knew that that they had run John Kerry, and when he lost, I know that the people in charge of that party said, "Oh, he was not commie enough. We got to run a full damn Marxist next time." So 9/11 didn't wake me up. It wasn't until Obama was kind of in charge, and I kind of knew that this is going the wrong way.
Exactly. What about you, Matt, for 9/11?
Well, I just turned 40 on the 6th, on Insurrection Day. That's my birthday. So I just turned 40. So happy birthday to me. But I was actually, in 2001, I was actually in the 10th grade.
Oh,
and,
wow.
you don't know anything in the 10th grade. Right? But I'll never forget, I was in driver's ed. And I remember, I was in my social studies wing, and I remember seeing the second plane hit on the TV in there. And my whole town smelled for months of the Trade Center. I can still smell it. It's the smell of that was disgusting. And you can see from Port Washington, it's only about 10 miles over the water to the city. So if you get to a high point in my town, you can actually see. So we would see, the smoke billowing up from where the Trade Center was. We were close enough for that. And that didn't really wake me up, though. I'm like David. It was really when Obama got into office. I tried to support Obama. When he won, I was like, okay, fair enough. It's a free and fair election. Let's try to get behind Obama. And then I saw this guy just demonizing and just disrupting and dividing. And I said, this guy's a POS. This guy's a real POS. And like David, and I'm sure like you guys, you start looking into something like 9/11. I mean, the city was very safe. Going to New York City after that, you could go anywhere in the city. You had cops on the block at all hours. I mean, the city was great after that. But yeah, Obama really destroyed the country. And then, of course, what really woke me up was Trump in 2015 and 2016. And then, of course, the Q movement starting in late 2017. I woke up to that in 2018. I started looking for anons out there that understood this stuff on 4chan. And you could start to see Trump posting and the Q post, and it would be at the exact, the same timestamps saying relatively similar things. And it just kept happening. And you're like, this is real. This is not just some psyop. This is really happening. And then you realize it was the military trying to communicate directly with us, bypassing the media, right? And ever since then, I've just been following that and just trying to use that as sort of my North Star in terms of the directions I take my life and my decisions. It's been a blessing.
Yeah. What an incredible time to be alive. All these things happening with this whole Q movement and the military operation and all these things that 85% of the people in the world don't even have any idea what we're talking about,
Try
but that
99%.
90, yeah, it's shaping our world, and that's why I'm so grateful to be able to have a front row seat with incredible patriots like you all, so much. And so David, how, you know, the interesting thing during the Obama administration that you were speaking of, I realized that at that time for the first time that we had no control over any narrative in the media because nothing that the truth about him was being shown. So how did you were you listening? Because my go-to at that time was Glenn Beck and then Rush Limbaugh every single day. What was your go-to at that time?
I was listening to Rush Limbaugh since the late 80s, and I learned a lot from him. And I knew all about Obama's voting record. And like I said, when Kerry lost, I knew the powers in the Democratic Party were going to go like full commie. And I knew it. I woke up my father in 2007 and said, this guy's going to try to take us to a communist dictatorship. And my father laughed and thought I was nuts. And then by the end of that trip to the golf course and back, he was paying attention and he started being, a evangelist too, like me. So yeah, I kind of knew that where we were going, and it was going to be like what we see in California: one party rule, Chicago politics, and watching what he was doing. Look, there's nobody that was more afraid of what Obama was doing than I was, because he was talking about going to a single payer system, which would have wiped out my business. And it didn't get to that. But what we got to see was, government health care. And just like Sarah Palin was saying, it's just a death panel. I need a knee replacement, and there's no way at age 62 I'd get one. And my mother had both knees replaced a couple of years ago. She's in her late 80s. None of that would have happened if we'd gone that way. So, I was very much aware, whether it was Obama really running things or the people now we know that are behind him. I knew that this was the breaking point and that we needed to wake up. And I tried as best I could to wake people up. I succeeded with my father and very few others.
Yeah, to your point
go
too,
ahead,
David, I
Tricia.
think a lot of I started waking up with the Obama coming onto the scene as well. And then because I was an independent consultant paying for my own insurance, I immediately got killed in my insurance policies trying as a business owner. I mean, back then for two people, back at the beginning of Obamacare, I was already seeing outrageous deductibles. And back then I was on a lot of different allergy and asthma medications for a month. My Advair alone was like $340 a month for one medication. And I was already paying, I think we're already paying $1,200 a month for our premiums. It was crazy back then. So I woke up really fast to the whole dangers of that whole healthcare policy. That's probably my first part of knowing that something was really, really wrong, but not being able to really put my finger on it. I totally bought into 9/11 and that whole narrative. So I just kind of wanted to add to that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe there's other people here that maybe that's how they started figuring out it was wrong too. If you're corporate America back at that time, your employer at that time kind of absorbed a lot of those costs. It only started to happen later, where they just started putting more and more on the individual employee who was still part of corporate America, to where now it's acceptable that you're going to pay X amount out of your paycheck. Whereas before, you didn't see those high deductions coming out of your paycheck. So they just sort of got you used to it over time. But back then it was pretty apparent if you were already paying for your own policy. So,
well,
sorry.
If I can make one more point, if you remember, it's what caused the Tea Party to form. It was, taxed enough already, but that's what really brought everybody out, was when they were threatening Obamacare. that, everybody on our side woke up, and they didn't go away. People think the Tea Party died. No, the Tea Party became MAGA.
Right. Exactly. You're
Totally.
exactly right. That's right. And so back then though, David, it's just so interesting to me. How did you navigate that craziness with Obamacare and everything and try to explain to people what it was or what it wasn't was or what it I mean that was such a confusing time. How did you navigate that?
Well, if the government really ran healthcare, I'd be out of business because they have unlimited money. They could charge a half price and put me out of business in a month. That didn't happen. But the government as a competitor, you see it right now. It's quadrupled the price. So Obamacare started out being competitive price wise, but our policies were always better because they're PPOs that give you full coverage, whereas the Obamacare plans were 95% HMOs. But dealing with the government as a competitor, it's laughable. They're idiots. The people that are, they wanted it to fail. They basically wanted it to fail, so then they'd force us into full-on government healthcare, socialized medicine. So it's actually been very beneficial for what I do because I'm competing against a bunch of incompetent government bureaucrats that don't know the first thing about insurance.
Awesome.
Wow.
Awesome.
Fascinating. You just have to explain that to people so that they understand it, because most people don't really realize that that's the case, right? So there's a lot of explaining on your part is to have people understand the difference, and so I'm sure that's a constant thing that you have to show people, right?
It's not difficult because their premiums in many cases, if they were getting a subsidy and maybe they were paying like, $800 for a husband and wife, suddenly it went to 2,000 or 2,500. So
Right.
this last month or two, it's been like that. People calling me, my rate was X, it's now 3 times X. Can you help me? And we're like, absolutely. So it's not that difficult, especially when we have a better product at a lower price. In most cases, it's not very difficult to convince somebody that they should go with us.
Yeah. And so as things are moving along with our health and human services and our the food pyramid is completely shifted, and they're taking out vaccines and things. Um Obviously that's going to affect you as well. Because it's the health industry is forever changing, but you're obviously have a business where you can be malleable and change with it, correct?
Right. I'm a broker. I work with private carriers where I know the people for 30 plus years. They're excellent people. They're honest. They listen. So we are able to adapt and change quickly. Where Goliath, like a Blue Cross, you're literally talking to some call center in India. You can barely understand what they're saying in most cases, and
Right.
they're not insurance people. They're just
Yep.
people that handle a phone. So yeah, it's not that it's not very difficult to do what we do because we are able to adapt and change very quickly compared to a large company.
Excellent. And so, Matt, that has to be the same for you too. I mean, right? Having your own company, you can make changes and go with what is happening.
Oh, totally. I mean, I can charge a lot less because I'm a small operation, I've really developed a strategy where people can take their IRA gold and silver and put it in their own possession through certain strategies, right? Every other company just offers a depository that you have to use. Not that I think there's anything wrong with it. And I like to think I put people in the right stuff. I try to tell people like, hey, if we're going back to gold and silver, backed money, you probably want to be in United States coinage, not the numismatic nonsense, but just, a straight, silver eagle or gold eagle. So a
Mhm.
lot of these big companies, they tell people, oh yeah, you got to go into this coin over here, or this, kangaroo or something like that, and they charge a fortune for it, and they make people think that, at the time, $150 silver is somehow good value by being in this coin because this coin's going to move up because it's something of scarcity or some nonsense like that. It's all fake. I just put people in the right stuff at the right price. It's really simple stuff. It's important stuff, right? Precious metals, having your money out of the banks in something that's increased. I mean, just imagine if you had your money in a checking account versus having your money in silver over the last year. You would have doubled your money in silver. Whereas a checking
Yeah.
account, you're subject to devaluation and all the stupidity like David talked about of the government. Because that's essentially what we're doing, right? We're competing with the government when you go into gold and silver, right? Who's going to win this rate? We are. So people that have been sitting in gold and silver, my clients over the years, everybody's up big time. Some people up 3-4 times on their money. So it's great. And it's not that the gold or the silver is more valuable, it's that everything else is losing value. And I expect that trend to continue where the dollar is going to continue to lose value. We're probably moving out of the Federal Reserve System, it looks like. I think the Federal Reserve right now is serving a purpose to Trump, and that is he's going to dump toxic assets on the Federal Reserve. They're going to buy them up, and then we're going to hand them back to their corporation at the end of this and say, thanks for playing, guys. And we move over to a treasury system. I see the future. I'm working on things like public trusts with certain people that I can't really talk about it, but public trust systems, I think, is the future because, hey, when we leave this system, where are we going? Right? Where we go, one we go all. We got to go somewhere together. Right. I think the new system is going to look like something like a public trust system. And what that's going to do is it's going to prevent corruption from ever being able to creep back in because government's going to happen on such a local level that you wouldn't be able to corrupt the whole system. Sure, there might be some corrupt, cities and counties, what have you. But on a large scale, I think it's really the solution. So I'm working with people on developing a strategy that we can roll out nationwide. This has nothing to do with gold or silver. This is just what I do in my free time. And I think, we have to take back this country. And, I think it starts with taking sovereignty back of your money, take sovereignty back in your healthcare. I mean, look what we learned during COVID about our government. Here are these, Pfizer and these different companies. Here we are thinking that these pharmaceutical companies are here to help us. They were out to kill us. Yes. They were out to literally kill us. We know this, right? And and to your first question that you asked, David, the person that really woke me up, I would say, is I was a big InfoWars guy in 2017 with Alex Jones. But it wasn't Alex Jones that I liked the most. It was David Knight. I think David Knight, he's since departed the show. I don't know why. I hope he comes back. But I think David Knight is one of the finest investigative journalists and reporters in the business. He woke me up to the 15-minute cities, all this, you'd hear about legislation on Fox News and these different places. And then David Knight would break it down and tell you what they were really doing. Right. And then Dr. Jerome Corsi, in 2017, I got his book, Dr. Corsi's book, Killing the Deep State, The Fight to Save President Trump. I recommend everybody read that book. It tells you how Comey and Mueller, they were going in and out of government at different times. He puts everything on a timeline. And he shows you who these people really are and what they were really doing behind the scenes and how they were going after Trump. And if everybody had read that book at the time, you wouldn't have had the Russian nonsense. Everybody would have been like, all right, this is crazy. You guys are lying. This is all fake. But of course, they dragged us through, 5 years of that. And, now we know it's fake. But I knew at the very beginning, thanks to Dr. Jerome Corsi. And it was an honor getting a chance to go on a show with him. And I think he was actually very impressed because I've read all his books. So yeah. I was on with a host. She didn't know that she just had him on the show. She didn't really know who he was. And I kind of ran the show. I'm like, Dr. Corsi, what do you think about this? And he was like, damn, this guy knows my work. So yeah, he's amazing. Nice. Dr. Corsi's a legend.
And so Matt, this is what I'm so curious about. So you obviously are in an industry where people are awake and people are not awake. You just summarized very quickly what you think is the road financially for us. Are you in the minority of people around you that actually understand and see that? I mean, because what you said is pretty big and pretty profound that we all have an idea with the Federal Reserve, but you said it so quickly and so succinctly. Are you in a group that knows this as well, or most people don't know this?
I would say the people that follow the behind the scenes news, the Cube movement people, are the people that are buying gold and silver right now. These are the people that understand. A lot of those people bought their gold and silver within the last 3 to 5 years. So those people are sitting a lot of them made their purchases. The people doing it now are the ones that waited and, didn't pull the trigger a couple of years ago. Maybe the husband wasn't in on it and the wife wanted to, or vice versa, whatever.
Yeah.
But, think of it like this, right? We haven't really seen the financial event yet. So people ask me, is silver and gold, is it going to go back down? How could it? We haven't even seen the financial event. And what are we seeing? Look at Minnesota, right? These daycare frauds by the Somalis in Minnesota. Now we're learning about Ohio, New York, Massachusetts, all these liberal cities. Right. Ilhan Omar, I just saw on the Gateway Pundit this morning. She approved a $1 million payment to some shady group that was clearly not who they said they were, right? Mm-hmm. So you can see all this. This is just all money laundering. Get this. I don't know if you caught this story. I've been talking about this one on the shows this week. But Officer Byrd, the one that shot and killed Ashley Babbitt on January 6th in the Capitol. Mm-hmm. Okay. This guy's been running an unaccredited daycare center out of his house and received $190 million from HHS. Okay. This is the most unbelievable story. And we're going to hear more about this. Is outrageous. I mean, it's like, you can't make this up. So I always tell people, it's like, what do you think is going to be revealed over time and more about the banking system and about the politicians and these different groups and these different, government entities? These guys, it's a money laundering operation. It's a money laundering. And what this is going to do is it's going to further erode the confidence of people between them and their government, them and their banks. And at a certain point, when exposure gets out there, you know what they're going to do, in my opinion? They're going to pull the plug on the banking system. That's what they're going to do temporarily. I think Trump has everything in place, ready to go. No one has to panic. It's not that type of situation, but something's got to give. And this corruption, I mean, we're finding that some of that money in Minnesota has been sent to, Al-Shabaab in Somalia and ISIS. I mean, it's unbelievable. And it's like, we knew that this stuff was going on. We didn't know exactly who was doing it and how they were doing it, but now we're seeing that. So I just caution. It's crazy.
It's mind-blowing, because I think that, like, some of us in the Cube movement, we kind of think that we have a pretty good idea of the corruption. But this daycare thing, I think it was Abs and Stormy on their show the other night, actually took us through exactly, like, this neighbor could say that they're child care for the sister that lives next door, and then vice versa.
Right.
And then the amount of money that they were getting per month. And then you multiply that times the number of people that are doing that. And then you take this across the United States, and you're like, oh my, that is mind blowing. So, and if this is the tip of the iceberg, because I'm always saying that I don't think anything could surprise me anymore. But just think about what else is coming, because this is just the tip. And I think we're just still going to be further blown out of the water. It's hard to even conceive about what else they've been doing, and the amount of greed. It's like this evil. No stone is left untouched. Like, they have corrupted and figured out a way to infiltrate every single aspect of our lives and flip everything and lie about everything. I mean,
yes.
There was a story last year that came out when Doge. I mean, it all started with Doge, right? Don't you love Doge? Doge didn't go away. Doge just went to the local levels, right? Yeah. And most likely, if you follow Q, you understand that Trump's already had this information. He's had it the whole time. He's in 2015, 2016, when he called out Hillary Clinton's 30,000 missing emails. He has those emails. The NSA has them, right? The Q people behind the scenes, we have it all, right? So we're just watching this stuff really play out right now. Yeah. So I don't think it's anything to worry about. But when you see stories like this, it's just like, damn, this was bad. This is just as bad as it gets. But I look at it like, when you see Trump with Melania on New Year's and she's wearing a silver dress, right? And I always used to joke, why do you think Trump dyes his hair bright gold with silver linings, right? There's been communications throughout the years to get into gold and silver. Trump can't come out and say it, but he can use semaphore, right? Yeah. He can use semaphore, right? He communicates in semaphore. He can come out and what's that?
Look how tan he was.
I love it. I love it. He's telling you got to get into the metals. It's just something where, look, you got to find a balance. You got to find between, you got bills to pay, right? You can't go pay your airfare or buy your groceries with gold and silver yet, maybe in the future, but you really want to take that savings or that retirement account or that extra money you have, and stick that into the precious metals. And even if you got to do it over time, just keep stacking. It's amazing. I stacked for, probably a good 20 years now. And it's unbelievable, how much gold and silver you can accumulate just by taking your savings. Hey, I'm going to take this portion out of my paycheck, stick it into the metals, right? Cover the rest of my bills. And you just do that strategically. You got it made. And you still have the opportunity to do that just at a little bit of a higher price than I got it at back in the day. So the good old days.
Can I ask you a couple of questions? Ellie, can I ask a couple of questions?
Please.
Of course.
Just because I feel like if I'm asking that others in the audience might be asking too. So I am one of those people that have been saying for years that I wanted to go buy silver, but I have a husband who is not awake. It's not a Q person. Watches the financial markets according to what mainstream media tells him and thinks that he's making all the right decisions. And he keeps telling me that, well, silver, it's it's too heavy to carry around or to store. And then when I tried to have that conversation about, how it's used in manufacturing and, all these, he's like, yeah, but how do you convert it? Like, if you're going to get silver, then you're holding on to it, then, how do you, convert that when you need that? And so that's sort of the argument that I run into. So I was wondering, one, if you had any answers to that. And
Sure.
two, I just got a whole bunch of my mom's silverware from when she passed away. Is that worth anything?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It
Hold
should be
on.
stamped. You should find there's usually stamps on it. And if it's sterling, they'll stamp it and it'll read 92.5, right? Sterling silver is 92.5% pure.
Okay.
So that's very close to pure silver, right? That's extremely valuable. It's tough to sell sometimes because really what you might want to do, the best way to do that would be maybe take it to a refiner and just give them a cut of whatever it is. That's usually probably the best way to do it. It's a little bit cumbersome to deal with. Like if you came into my store with it, I probably wouldn't buy it. If I bought it, I would buy it so that I could eat off silverware myself. It would be for my own house or something.
Maybe later.
Later. But to your first question, yeah, you come to somebody like me. So for example, if I take in products that I don't want, right? Let's say somebody comes to me. I'm not a big fan of 100-ounce bars. I find them, I like coin. To me, that's what I buy. But I have to service this stuff, right? So at the end of the day, people come to my office, say, I want to liquidate these 100-ounce bars. I'll give you, if it's under 10,000 here in Arizona, I can give you cash for it without any reporting. If it's over, I write them a check or send them a bank wire, right? And I can offload that to a wholesaler and get my liquidity out of it too, right? So we have a market where we're extremely liquid in precious metals. And it's never been more the case because, of course, silver is probably the hottest asset on planet Earth right now. So believe me, you could go, you want some real advice? Go on eBay, become your own gold dealer and silver dealer, and you could go sell your stuff on eBay if you really wanted to. Go be $1 cheaper than the other guys, and you could sell it, you probably sell it within a day. So these are just little creative solutions that you could do if you really needed to liquidate some stuff, and always give yourself some time. Like, don't come to me in a pinch where you need money right this second, always make sure, hey, you got a couple days to, give yourself some breathing room. But to your other part of the question, the way gold and silver used to work was you used to be able to go into a bank and redeem the gold and silver for either money or to load your account. So the component that's missing in going back to a gold and silver backed money is really the redemption capability at a local bank. So this is my case for why the banks are going to be completely rearranged so that you're going to be able to go into your bank and load up your bank account with that gold and silver. Now your local bank that has your gold and silver is a real asset backed bank. It's no more fractional reserve lending. They have real assets on site. Right. And you're going to start you're seeing already state depositories popping up. Texas is already doing it. Florida is already doing it. So you're going to start seeing some of these states, Arizona, where I am, we're going to start doing it. Some of these states, these red states are going to start leading the way. And I think it's going to be a very organic movement back into the precious metals, because as the confidence erodes between people, their government and their banks now, the only thing that's going to build back that trust is going to be that physical gold and silver, where people are going to say, hey, I'm not banking with you unless I know that you have my assets on site, that what just happened in this banking crash that we just went through, okay, this is never going to happen again. You guys have assets, you're going to get audited. And this is where the digital space can become extremely valuable, right? A digital ledger, blockchain. So I see this convergence of these two assets, physical gold and physical silver, as well as the crypto space. I think a lot of the cryptos are going to wind up being a scam. Probably, and I own Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is probably a scam. I've heard it's, created by DARPA, Defense Advanced, Defense Advanced Projects Agency, whatever it is. So we'll see. But I think, to your question, I think the redemption factor of gold and silver at a bank is going to be the final piece of the puzzle to get us back to gold and silver backed money. And we'll probably have oil backed money too, right? But U.S. oil, not foreign oil, U.S. oil. So I think we'll have diversification within the dollar. I think we'll have many types of dollars, so that, if one, you can trade throughout different types of dollar, right? You want your dollars and your life energy backed by oil, put some of it in oil, some of it in gold and silver, right? Maybe platinum and palladium start coming into the equation.
Thank
you. It'll be really interesting.
That's the missing piece. I think that, we hear all about, buy gold and silver, but we never I think many of us have not been able to understand, but then what? And
you're always liquid. I always I'll buy it myself. And if I don't even want it, I just go to the wholesalers. The wholesalers are happy to buy it from me, right? There's only about 5 wholesalers out there. So you have to do a certain, I have to do millions of dollars a month to have the privilege of working with one of them.
Okay.
So, yeah. So at the end of the day, you can come to me at my retail shop. I'm your exit strategy or your local dealer, and I always tell people, it's like, hey, if you want to support the show, sure, come to Verity Metals, call me, right? Happy to talk to you. You're doing business with people that'll take care of you. But hey, don't be afraid to go to your local dealer. I think it's great to have a local relationship too. And it's good to keep these guys in business. Hey, those guys, having them locally to you, that can be a real advantage, a real convenience. You want to pick up a couple coins or a couple bars, whatever. It's nice to be able to just walk into a shop and just walk out with so there's something nice to that. So don't be afraid to support your local dealers too. I'm all for that.
Do you just look up local silver dealers in your
Absolutely,
area?
yeah. Depending where you are in the country, some place in the country, there's no one around. So absolutely call me, and certainly on bigger orders, if you're doing couple $100,000 or a couple $1 million, I'll get you a great price on that stuff. I'll give you like a real wholesale price on purchases like that.
Okay. Thank you.
This is so fascinating because I can see that, Matt, you've explained the shoe dropping and how you think this is all going to happen in the financial world. But David, there's this whole, sh- there's this whole shoe dropping and it's going to be dropping in the healthcare industry as well. And they're giving us little opening the curtain for us a little bit. But, even I know folks that have had healthcare fraud, and it's just wrought with laundering and deception, and that's why they're charging so many high prices, right? How do you see healthcare moving into the future, and how to get rid of the laundering and the corruption, and what do you see happening?
It's a great question with a lot of moving parts. The
Yeah.
primary driver right now of rate increases are the pharmaceuticals. These companies are cooking up some chemical in the lab by the probably 1,000-gallon vat. It probably cost them pennies. They're selling Ozempic for like $1,000 a month. Skyrizi, like $22,000 an injection. You got to be kidding. That's like it helps psoriatic arthritis and psoriasis. But the pharmaceutical problem, it has to be dealt with. They can't be allowed to sell these chemicals. And I think we're going to go to natural medicine and holistic way more as people learn they've been poisoned, and things like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, fenben, etc. So we're going to go, and they take years, but we're going to have a crash course in that. So they deal with the pharmaceuticals. That's number one. Number two, they got to deal with like a pricing mechanism. When you go to a ball game and you want to buy a beer, you're going to pay $20 or whatever because there's nowhere else to go. Like you're in a hospital, they can literally charge you whatever they want. And if it's an out-of-network doctor, you're on the hook for it, which is, again, why I only sell PPOs. So you got to get to some kind of like standard pricing reimbursement model. And the one that does that right now is Medicare. So it'll probably be some type of what's called reference-based reimbursement, which uses like a percentage above Medicare. So let's say a Medicare patient is going to get $100. Somebody under 65 market, maybe it's going to be 40% more, so they'll get 140, something like that, where you have some kind of standardized pricing, so these doctors just can't charge whatever they want. The problem is there's no capitalistic mechanism like competition. So if the hospitals would say, like, I need a knee replacement, so if I could shop it and find out, all right, the best guy in the world is at the hospital for special surgery in New York, but this guy in Philadelphia at Rothman's almost as good, and it's going to be half the price, as long as I was confident that surgeon's had a great track record. So things like that, competition. What I think Trump is telegraphing is what are known as health savings accounts, HSAs, where you can dump in, let's say it's like $7,000 or $8,000 a year. You put that in a separate fund, and that is 100% deductible from your taxes, so you get the tax advantage. Then you are going to basically take a high deductible plan, which will get your premium down. So you have, let's say, a $7,000, $5,000, $10,000 deductible, catastrophic type coverage, and now you've got this pool of money that rolls over every single year until you're 65. So whatever you don't use, it just builds up and grows, and you can even invest it in something like silver. So health savings accounts are probably what Trump is talking about. He's also saying we're going to stop subsidizing the insurance companies and give that to the public. So my reading of that is they're going to incentivize health savings accounts like I'm talking about, probably either through the tax code or just giving people money that they can only use for medical reimbursement. So it's a very complicated problem. And the last thing, I don't want to hear people say, I want Trump to fix it. No, we don't want the government to fix it. We want the government to set up a competitive market, because free markets work and governments do nothing but completely wipe out competition.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so fantastic. That's exactly how I feel too. That's so, you guys are the best. I just love it. And so before we move on, because David, you gave us a couple pictures of your family and your wonderful family. I feel like I have to show a couple of these pictures that you have that are such milestones, obviously, in all of our lives. So this is one of you have two sons?
I have three. That's my
Okay.
oldest son, Zachary. He's married to the most wonderful, perfect woman that you could ever imagine. That's his wife, Brittany, a beautiful person inside and out. That's my wife, Carrie, to the right. So he's our oldest. They have three kids of their own. They live in North Carolina. So we've got three grandkids, 1, 2, and 5. So it's insanity when we go over there.
Yeah, and they're the ones that
North Carolina lead.
Yeah,
Ellen,
what?
all roads lead back to North Carolina.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the three that they have.
that's
Very
them.
cute.
Yeah, he's a physician, a family doctor, brilliant guy. He's funny as can be. So yeah, we couldn't be prouder. He went the long route through med school. I mean, it's really so many years you dedicate to school and so much ridiculous debt. But fortunately now he's doing so well, and we couldn't be happier. It's a really wonderful family, and we go down as much as we can possibly go.
That's so interesting. So, does he understand what's happening in the medical industry, and does
Not at all. Completely asleep. Promoting the jabs, jabbing our grandkids. It's not a laughing matter. I'm not happy about that at all. But we cannot say a word to him. He's been trained and he's a doctor and he's 37, so he'll
right?
learn. He'll learn. But it's not our ability to say. It's his family and his wife's family, so we stay out of it. But it's very
Right.
concerning. I am very hopeful that, thank goodness for RFK Jr. and what he's doing,
Yeah.
as the vaccines just went from 72 to 11. So, you got one very happy pop-up here that's not so concerned anymore, because I think they've kind of mitigated whatever, poisons, thimerosal, mercury in our vaccines, and aluminum, and who else, who knows what else. So he'll learn, but I
Yeah.
think it's been taken care of. I hope so.
Yeah. I
Amen.
I I agree. And then I just want to add one more picture. So this is
Ah.
another.
Oh,
Yes, hairstyle by Kim Young Il. That's North Korean
that
dictator.
face.
That's my youngest, Jesse. Just had a
Oh,
baby 3 months ago. They live in New Jersey, so they're nearby. He's another one that married us, a wonderful, wonderful woman, and we couldn't be happier. Just so happy to have the baby. That's Cameron. He's now 3 months old.
that
Oh,
face.
Amazing. So
so
cute.
cute. And it is, I do feel, I think because all of us too see the light at the end of the tunnel, even though we know people and have friends that are we know are brainwashed in their way of thinking and are vaccinated and all that stuff. We see the light. And so I think we're more peaceful with it. Do you agree? David, do you think that? Is that why you feel more peaceful with it?
Um, yeah, I mean, I believe that everything we're watching has been handled. So they had to get rid of the most dangerous things. Like if we were in jeopardy of having some kind of horrible event, EMP or whatever, I think those things would have been mitigated right away. The biggest risk factors had to be taken off the table, and anything that could have poisoned us, would have been removed too. Q told us your families are safe. So I've always taken that, and I've been relaxed about everything. Look, I'm very outspoken, and I'm out there, and I have no fear. Look, something could happen, but I don't really fear that, because I really do believe Patriots not only are in control, they've been in control since a long time ago, and that we are not really at risk for much.
Oh, yes, I hope that that's
Great.
the case for sure. I think because we're all very much in the same community, we have similar thoughts with that. And then Matt, you mentioned too, and I think we've all heard this, but we're not sure how it's gonna unfold, that it's gonna get bumpy and there's gonna be some sort of scare event. D you touched that you think that that is coming. Do you see that happening? You think it's gonna be threefold, financial plus war plus this? I mean, what how do you see the future
Well, I
happening
think
here?
while I totally agree with what David said, I do think there are some X factors out there. Some, maybe a dirty bomb that got out. Right, there's that rumor of the 80, briefcase, or the suitcase bombs, where I think the mechanism that detonates it are completely outdated. But I do think that there's going to be some big event, some 9/11 style event that's going to have to really wake everybody up. Unfortunately, as much as I'd love to sit here and say the Patriots are in total control, yeah, maybe over here in the United States, but I would look to Europe and something happening over there, maybe between Russia and the Ukraine, maybe a false flag, right? Nuke goes off, whatever the case may be. I mean, your guess is as good as mine, but something, and unfortunately, something's got to snap people out of it. Fortunately, we're sitting here wide awake, just watching things going on. But I'm also very cautious about just enjoying the show. As much as I love to, and I am relaxed. I don't sit here and really stress this stuff because I feel prepared. I feel like I've done what I could, whether that be my finances, whether that be I own a lot of firearms. I got a lot of ammo for them. Arizona is probably the best. I got the silencers and short barrel rifle, you name it. In New York, I'd be a 50-time felon for the stuff I have out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I got the storables, I've got the generators, I've got extras for the little doggies. I'm prepared. So I do think there will be a 10 days of darkness moment, and I think that will be an exciting time. Because that way people can get out. Who talks to their neighbors anymore? I do. I talk to I love my neighbors. I invite them over whenever I have a party. But people got to get out there and start getting to know their neighbors, because when we rebound from whatever it is that's coming, I think it's really going to be about, kind of as Flynn says, General Flynn, which is it's going to happen at the local level, right? The local impact has the national impact. So I think we got to strengthen our, first our neighborhoods, then our city, then our county, right? So on and so forth. So that's where my mind is, and I'm ready and willing to help in any way I can. So
I agree. I tend to think the lights are going to go out because we're getting a lot of those comms. And remember, Trump said that they turned the grid off in Venezuela. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but a few years ago, it was right around December timeframe in North Carolina, where supposedly they blamed it on some random guys who shot at the utility field and literally took out an area that was kind of around Fuquay or near the Fort Bragg area. I can't remember the exact, but that they were actually out of power for weeks and that was in the news as supposedly like, wow, look how exposed our grid is, that a couple of yahoos could shoot it out and like literally put an entire community off the grid of power for. And I just, I think about repeats are necessary. And I wonder if that was a real event and that it was an opt, and maybe it was the white hats that did it. And they literally took the power out for a reason, for whatever it is they needed to go get. There was some folks down there that they needed to go get, and that we're going to get a replay of that. That's kind of where my mind's going. And then again, that would force everybody to pay attention if you don't have power. And, just like we do when we have a hurricane hit. I grew up on the Gulf Coast, so we know those drills. And then you cook everything in the freezer because it's going to go bad, and you invite all the neighbors over, and you have a trade of who's got water, who's got this, and you come together. And I know Juana Savin's been saying that for years, is that we're going to have to learn to take care of our neighbors and to pick a side and to come together. And he's been very consistent about that message over and over and over again. And so that's sort of where my head goes.
What about you, David? Do you see something like that happening?
Man, I've been thinking about that since 2017. I really don't, because it hasn't really come from the top. I think they're doing it in such a slow drip fashion, number one. And number two, and the scare event may have happened, it may have been COVID, to show us that we could be locked down for 10 years and never be able to get out of it without fighting a hot war. So my opinion is that we're getting really close. We're getting a lot of hints about election fraud being proven. And my stance for the last number of years has been, as soon as Trump proves election fraud, he's proven treason. And it won't take the public, as brainwashed and stupid as they are, to make that jump. Like, wait a second. So Joe Biden wasn't really president. That election was rigged and stolen. So wait, if he's not president, isn't that a coup? That's treason. Yeah. So
Right.
that could be like, maybe we're past the scare event, and Trump's been hinting at it so clearly. And Flynn said this is 2026 is the year of accountability. So I may be, optimistic, and I can easily be wrong, but I think that the flood that Q promised us is not here. There's no D5 avalanche yet, but we're going to get there, and it might not require a scare event, because I don't know. They've been trying to cook that up with Ukraine and Russia for like 5 years, and that hasn't happened. And so maybe it was COVID, and maybe that the arrests and the election fraud. Once you cross that red line of election fraud and therefore treason, how does the public, not just stop everything and say, wait a second, they overthrew America here, folks, and we're going to get to the bottom of that. And that could start the cascade of the flood. So that's kind of how I see it playing out. But nobody knows. It could be any of the above.
Yeah.
It would be a lot easier if they do lock you in and show you the videos. But do I really want, that video being 10 years of what we learned condensed into a few hour film? I'm not sure. But, we're all going to be part of it. And people that
Yeah.
don't know anything are eventually going to come to us and ask us, okay, what the hell's going on? And we're like, yeah, you got 10 years to catch us, but we can start you off on the beginner's course. So that's kind of my thoughts of it, that it will be like the drip flood, but the flood is what's going to wake everybody up, and we're going to be where the banks fail, and we got the backup system in place. So that's kind of my opinion of it.
Nobody.
And I would have a hard time. I don't mean to interrupt. Stop, River. I would have a hard time believing that Trump would allow the banking system to totally fail.
Yeah, me too.
Right? People would die. Older folks, especially, they'd have a heart attack, a stroke. So he's got something up his sleeve. I
just don't think he's going to let people jump off buildings, because there's just, I had this conversation yesterday with someone about, they've taken such great pains to do this in such a methodical way so that it doesn't cause a lot of casualties. And the people that aren't smart and that aren't in the know to go and buy and invest in silver and gold, what's going to happen to those people? I just don't feel like that they're going to leave those people behind. And so that's what gives me comfort in knowing that maybe it's not going to be something too scary and drastic. But hey, nobody in the movement started an official bingo card. We're going to look back after the event. We're going to go, why didn't we do a bingo card here?
And that's the brilliance of this time, I think, because we could sit here and talk about so many different scenarios, because we don't know. That's the whole point, but we can see certain paths happening, and that's what makes it so exciting. And so I want to end in this area. When I started interviewing all these truth tellers on this channel, what I thought, but I didn't know for sure until I started interviewing everybody. And though people have very different lives, every single person, and I mean every single person that I interviewed, have had either a gradual increase in their spiritualness, or had something happen to them. And because this is such a spiritual time, David, in your life, have you seen in your spiritual thoughts about things, has it been a gradual increase, or has this happened to you, an increase, a sudden thing happened to you?
Since being in this movement, it's definitely become I've become much more spiritual. I think everybody has, because you really see the good versus evil. So I'm a strong believer in God and an afterlife, and that we're here for a lot of reasons. But yeah, I think that everybody that's in this can't deny it. In fact, you know what Kim Clement said? Trump would come into office not as a religious man, but he would leave as one. And that always struck me. And you see that, Trump praying and invoking God and everything. And so I don't see how you can be on this side and not feel like you're on God's side. God's on our side. We are fighting evil. We know that. I don't care what type of culture you have, you cannot touch children. That is a screaming
Right.
red line. And these people do the worst to that. And I think if anything like that has to be ended, and I'm sure it is. And it is. They pray to Satan. Like, how sick! And we all think that, and we tell people that they think that we're nuts, but they really do. And when you go down that rabbit hole, you see what they do. It's like you have to be more spiritually awake and more connected to God. And it's absolutely happened to me and pretty much everybody I know in this movement.
Me too. All of us. What about you, Matt? Oh, there's your baby Jesus.
Nice. Yeah, totally. I grew up totally non-religious at all. We celebrate Christmas and stuff like that. But even Christmas, look at Christmas, it's a satanic holiday. So right when you start to understand this stuff, I just feel like God runs through me. When I started really waking up, I feel like my connection to God started getting really strong. And I'm not one of those people that really, I can't, sit here and cite the Bible with you and tell you, oh, what's your favorite? I've hardly read the Bible at all, but I feel it in me. And like David pointed out, I mean, the level of depravity of these people is just, it's unbelievable. I mean, these people are the most, Hillary Clinton's probably one of the most religious people out there, right? She'll mock Christians and she'll mock people of faith, but she's probably more religious than anybody you've ever met. But she worships who? Satan. Yeah. She's a Satanist. And then you realize that that's permeated throughout our entire government, where, that guy out of New York, what was his name? He called out Congress for the orgies that they were having below the congressional floor. Just like sick and just depraved things that these people are doing. George, he was ousted from Congress. I'm talking. Is that in New York? Anyway, doesn't matter. But you start to learn about who these people really are, and it's you got to choose a side. And I've absolutely chosen mine. I'll die on this hill if need be. Once as they say, once you wake up, they'll never put you back to sleep. So here we are.
Exactly. And I think that's the other component of why I think we're in a calm, peaceful, even though we know things, we don't know what's going to happen and we don't know how it's going to happen. It's this sense of a greater good that we all understand, that has won and has given us this sense of calm and peace, which is, I'm just so grateful for so much, and to be able to share with all of you. And so I'm just on a final note, I would just love to hear your final thoughts about, anything you'd like to say about what you think is coming, your thoughts about the future, and what you're doing. Matt, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, as we were talking about before, I think we're going to, on a daily basis, get more stories about fraud that they're uncovering. I think there's a big focal point on getting somebody like Ilhan Omar. So I would be watching those stories coming out of Minnesota and all the fraud and money laundering that she's involved in, and the state's involved in, and Waltz is involved, all these different people. I expect to see more and more of that. I think we're going to see a lot more about the election fraud. Because remember, what Trump's goal is here for mid-2026 is to get us back to paper ballots, free and fair elections. And I think, this is going to be such a scare to the Democrats, because if we had free and fair elections this whole time, none of them would be in Congress. None of them are legitimate winners. I would be looking out for my friend Lloyd Brunson, a good friend of mine. I'd be watching for the Brunson case to start getting some legs in the Supreme Court. I know he's not over yet. He was at my house a couple months ago. He stayed here for 3-4 days. And he's telling me that case is, let me tell you something, that case is alive and well. Okay. And when we get discovery on these people, it's going to be first treason. Treason just means they have to go out of office, $10,000 fine, can never hold office again. Then we want discovery on these people. That's going to show where the money payments went, where all the conspiracy and collusion happened. That's high treason. That's punishable by death. So we're building up this, I think right now, as we start to see this fraud coming out, next it's going to be election, then it's going to be something else. And before you know it, they're going to be so exposed, something's going to have to be done. So, and then we'll have the 2026 election. So I'm very hopeful for that. But yeah, I would be looking out for fraud. And I think, just to give my business a plug, it's going to be very good for the precious metals. I can tell you that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you just have to comment because how our worlds intersect and who we talk to and who comes into our life, it's just so interesting. I went to America's Future event in Mar-a-Lago, and I only got to talk to a few people, but one of them was Lloyd Brunson. And I'm going to be interviewing him, and he said to me, and I said, "Thank you for all you do." And he there at the pool of Mar-a-Lago, of all places, it was so surreal. He looked at me and he said, "You're going to see a lot of amazing surprises in 2026." And so I thought, "Oh my gosh." I mean, he looked me in the eye and said that. And I
Lloyd's a
thought,
hell of a guy.
"Oh my goodness." And so, I mean, if that wasn't the greatest thing to get to hear, so obviously there's some things happening in the most wonderful, incredible way. I can't wait. So, what about you, David? Tell us, what are your last thoughts about everything and just your thoughts?
Well, first, it's funny. Matt said he's got like the best job in the movement, and I feel the same way. I get
Yeah.
calls from patriots every day, and we don't talk about insurance for long. That's part of it. But we're talking about the movement, and we are involved in the greatest movement in the history of the world. We are literally going to save the world, save our country first, but save the world. And it's not going to be stopped. It can't be. We're already way past any possibility that as Flynn said, we're not at the abyss. We're over the cliff and in the valley, and we're climbing out. And it's all going to happen. There's no doubt. That's why I'm at total peace. I read the Q drops from like week 2, from like early October. I was involved in it, lived through it. My wife and I both did, and we never believed it would have been 8 years later, and here we are. But I am absolutely convinced beyond any doubt, nobody will ever change my mind. This is all going to happen. It's only a question of timing. We've given up guessing, but it certainly looks like things are set up for 2026 to be the long-awaited revelations and justice, and everything's going to be fixed. It might mean the rest of our lives we're working to build back this country the way it should be, but we're going to deal with all the criminality. I have complete faith. It's not just Trump. There's a 60,000 man and woman secret army that's probably double or triple that size that's been doing all this, and we are in good hands of patriots. Whenever this started and whenever it ends, it doesn't matter to me, because the public is now going to be galvanized, probably to the tune of 94 to 96% at some point, that are on the same page going forward. So I couldn't be happier. I don't worry about the time it's taking because I enjoy every day. If something big happens, you love it and know where it's going, and you just know that truth, justice, accountability, all those things are going to happen, and America will be made great, and we will be the shining city on the hill. We will be the beacon of light for all the world, and we're going to be the greatest generation. We are going to, when we leave this place physically, we're going to know we did the best damn job that any generation or any group of people ever did.
Wow,
Yes.
David, that was awesome.
Amen.
I just wanted to thank you both as well, and because Ellen put together this beautiful Truth Teller Tales, this is the time capsule of patriots like you that are so instrumental and never give up and just keep on going and going and going in this movement and bringing more and more people in when they're ready, because we've all kind of done the throw up and show up, and we're learning and trying to get better at that. And this is historical, and we just thank you for being a part of it and sharing with us.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's been an honor, and it's been I think people are gonna watch this and just be jazzed, because I am, because God is on our side, and God has won, and it's just a incredible time to be alive. Thank you so much for honoring us, for spending time with us, and for being wonderful men, and thank you. Just thank you for being with us and for all you
Thank you.
do.
Our
Thank
pleasure.
you, guys.
Thanks.
All right, take care.
Adios.